Hey friends, it's Steph, and today I'm going to show you how to make this spooky black cake for a Death to My 20s themed party. I adore this party theme, and I am so happy that it's getting its moment right now. Whether it's Death to My 20s, my 30s, my 40s, whatever it is, I love it. I'm here for it. I'm just speeding through this stocking and filling process here because it's not really the focus of the video, but just to give you guys the details, these are 6-inch chocolate cake layers. And would you believe me if I said that they are gluten-free and dairy-free? You shouldn't, because you shouldn't believe everything you hear on the internet, but they are. I promise. So I'm stacking them up, making a little ring dam of buttercream, and then filling it with the dairy-free chocolate ganache. Then I did my crumb coat in the black frosting. I find when working with really dark or really light colors, I like to do my crumb coat in the same color so that if the top coat is thin in any sections, it still looks okay. Think if you're like wearing a sheer top, you would wear maybe the same colored bra underneath. You know, that kind of vibe. So this frosting is made with like a vegan butter, which was actually very difficult to get a dark, deep black color. For whatever reason, and I mean, I know the scientific reason behind it, my usual tips and tricks for getting buttercream to be nice, dark, deep, rich color do not work with the vegan butter. So this is a bit of a battle, but I did sort it out. One of the other things to note is that the color will deepen over time. So it still looks a little bit grayish now, but I wasn't worried. While the crumb coat was setting, I worked on these little chocolate skull decorations. I will link them both of these in the description. I just made them using some vegan chocolate and a little bit of coconut oil. And then, of course, dusted them with some black edible glitter. Now, back to the cake for the top coat, just plopping on that black frosting, smoothing it out all over the top and down the sides. And then, because this was going to be a Lambeth style cake with lots of piping, I just wanted that top coat to be as smooth as possible. But also, any small imperfections could probably be covered with some piping down the road. Once I get the cake fully coated with buttercream, I take my flat scraper and just swipe it around the side of the cake, trying to keep the scraper at a perfect angle, and then going back in with buttercream to fill any areas that need more frosting, whether it's because there's a hole or it's just a gap, and then smoothing out again with the scraper, and repeat back and forth until you've got it fully covered. While Tyler grabs us a frozen pizza from the freezer in the background, and Hound makes sure that he's okay with that. For that final shiny, smooth top coat, I heat my scraper up under some hot water at the tap, and then to get a crispy corner at the top, I let the cake chill in the fridge till the buttercream is hardened, and then using a hot knife, I just slice off that top rim. And now we have perfect corners and a nice smooth top coat. To plot out my piping, I used a scraper to divide the top into little wedges. I think I did 6 different pie pieces here. And this is a 6-inch cake, so maybe that's a good rule of thumb. For an 8-inch cake, you could probably do 8. I did 6 because I had 6 skulls and because I thought it would look nice, and I was right. Then to map out my ruffles, I just took a round cookie cutter and lined it up with those lines I made on the top of the cake for each wedge. Just pressed it lightly into the side to give myself a template to pipe on later. Then I came in to clean up the cake board a bit. It just collects frosting from when you're smoothing out the sides, and I would normally do this at the end, but I'll be piping a border there, so it'd be a bit trickier after. Now, for that bottom border, I use the Wilton 104, the petal tip, and essentially just right on the cake board, I'm doing an up and down little wave motion. Looks kind of like a nicely folded ribbon, and just doing that all the way around the entire bottom perimeter of the cake. Now, using the same piping tip and following those guidelines that I put out for myself, I held the tip kind of parallel to the cake and just made this swooping up and down motion as I followed the curve of that guideline. So these ones kind of look like a hanging garland or something like that. Having those guidelines there is critical for making this one look nice and even. Now, back to the bottom border. I switched piping tips. I don't know the number of this one, but it's a very small open star tip. Looks the same shape as the Wilton 1B, just a lot smaller. And I'm just doing the classic shell pattern right on top of those ruffles that I put down before. Now, up top, swapping piping tips again. This is a leaf tip, and I'm doing the same piping technique as I did with the shell on the bottom, where you just squeeze the bag, lift a little, and then pull it out into a tail. And then repeat, stacking them on top of each other until you have the full border around the top. Now, to add some more detail, I grabbed my tiniest round tip, and I'm just adding a bit more swoops following the same line as the ruffles. These can be tricky, and this is why you want to make sure that your frosting is smooth with no air bubbles. Because if you have an air bubble, it will cause the frosting to break as it's coming out of the tip, and then it'll fall and you won't get those nice clean swoops. It happens to me all the time. You can either scrape it off and try again, or just kind of continue where you left off. Now, for this next part, you will see me putting the skulls on the side of the cake. Eventually, I decide I don't like them there, and I end up pulling them all off. But I did some piping in between, so I'm still showing it so you guys can see the next step of what I'm doing. Just ignore those for now. To fill in those gaps on the sides, I just used the round tip again and piped it so it kind of looks like a heart, but separated, because I was going to fill in that little gap later. So just 2 little upward swoop and then pull down into a tail right underneath each skull, but those are going to be gone in a second. Then I went back to that little open star tip. I did 1 shell at the center of those 2 little dots. by swooping up and then pulling down into a tail. And repeating that all the way around the cake for I think a total of 6, because that lines up with the lines that I had on top. And we're almost done. We just have to fill out the top a little bit. So I'm using a big open star tip now. I think this is the Wilton 6B, and just doing big buttercream swirls. Normally at the top of this style of cake, I would do a shell border, but I wanted to do something different to kind of highlight the skulls a bit more and give the cake a little bit more height, because I just felt like it wasn't perfectly proportioned yet. So I did 6 of those buttercream swirls all the way around the outer perimeter of the cake. And this is when it really hit me that I did not like the skulls. It felt like they were kind of just sticking out from the side of the cake, making it look a little bit more stubby. You guys can let me know if you see that too, or if I was just in my own head. But I popped them off with a knife, and then I went and filled in the gap that they were previously in with a little swoop and then a nice pretty rosette using that small star tip. And then I plunked the skulls up in between the ruffles, kind of directly on top of each little rosette. And like 10 out of 10, I am so much happier with how this looks now. Sometimes you just gotta trust your gut and know that what you did can be better. And that is it. I added a little bit more edible glitter. Sometimes it's hard to know when to stop with Lambeth cakes. Like I felt like I could have added more swirls, more borders, but I decided to call it, and looking back, I'm glad I did. I feel like the finished product is perfect. Here she is in much better lighting. And after that black color has had time to really deepen, the perfect cake for saying goodbye to your 20s or your 30s or for Halloween or for just a goth party or one of those cool weddings where it's like till death do us part. Anyways, you know the vibe. Thanks for watching.